promise, I'm going to tell you about poetic terrorism, a concept which first appeared in a poem of the same name by Hakim Bey, and I'm going to tell you why it's an argument that art, your art, should be illegal. The poet Hakim Bey does not define poetic terrorism, he simply instructs you to commit it, as if poetic terrorism were already known to you, already a truth of your heart, and upon hearing the words poetic terrorism, the concept would rush forth from within you, newly awakened. The poet says, quote, "Burglarize houses, but instead of stealing, leave poetic terrorist objects," as if we should already know what that means. If you look up poetic terrorism, you will not find a definition nor a Wikipedia article, although now you may be able to find this video. And you will find an article, a Wikipedia article for an album called Poetic Terrorism, and you will also find one person briefly try to explain it, a person who also mentions that there is no Wikipedia article, but this person does not define it either. Instead, they contrast the poetic terrorism of Philippe Petit, who committed the crime of walking across the Twin Towers on a tightrope, and the actual terrorism that crumbled the same towers. One killed thousands, one amazed thousands, but both were illegal. The poet says poetic terrorism is a, quote, act in a theater of cruelty which has no stage, no rows of seats, no tickets and walls. The theater, that is, the world around us, is cruel, but an act of poetic terrorism never is. To walk across the Twin Towers on a tightrope was not cruel. The poet tells us why we must do it, to, quote, kidnap someone and make them happy, to, quote, organize a strike in our school or workplace on the grounds that it does not satisfy our needs for indolence and spiritual beauty. Our environment may be ugly, but we can make it beautiful. Poetic terrorism must make our world more beautiful, or it cannot really be said to be poetic terrorism. The poet says that the victims of poetic terrorism will, quote, come to realize that for a few moments they believed in something extraordinary, and will perhaps be driven as a result to seek out some more intense mode of existence. Poetic terrorism shakes us from our reality and allows us to see a better one that we can build together, and poetic terrorism, it should invoke feelings as strong as those invoked by terrorism, a noxious awe, epiphany-inducing euphoria, a Dadaist angst, but Dadaism has failed us. It did not catch us from our soporific fall into fascism because it is legal. It is bound up in the conventions of art and galleries, only to be studied and appreciated by self-appointed cultural elites. But poetic terrorism must exist outside of these limitations. Poetic terrorism may seem lofty and unachievable, far away, but it is all around us in the graffiti that surrounds us. If a teenager, for want of beauty, trapped in a city of dead gray, should graffiti some color onto the walls around them to say that they are here, and here does not have to be ugly, this is called a crime. But what crime do the owners and protectors of private property call this? They have the audacity to call that graffiti vandalism, when it is they who have vandalized the face of the earth with cheap, brutalistic architecture that fills the cities and stretches out into a sprawling, homogeneous plain of suburbs. And this is why the best poetic terrorism is a crime, because for as long as the laws are not just, for as long as we cannot imagine not murdering children or not letting them starve, for as long as you can make the world a more beautiful place and commit a crime in the same act, the best art will be the art that has been made illegal. If you've seen my other videos about poetry, you know that I sometimes struggle with poetry, particularly prose poetry, but reading this poem, I do understand why it is poetry. It is a series of images and declarations that invoke emotions. It is not a set of logical propositions, and it does not follow a narrative structure. I'm not even sure it was meant to be poetry, strictly speaking, but I can find no other way of reading it. And you can find the complete poem pasted into a comment below with some links, and if you'd like to talk about a different prose poem, Memory by H.P. Lovecraft, you can click over here. But don't forget to drop me a like before you go, and remember, good night, good day, and good potato.